Tashidelek, last month, Beijing imposed sanctions on two Canadian organizations and several individuals advocating for Tibet and East Turkestan. Among the primary targets were the Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project and the Canada-Tibet Committee, with 20 individuals associated with these groups added to the sanction list by the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Joining us today from Ottawa is Mr. Samphe Lhalungpa, Chair of the Board of the Canada-Tibet Committee and a former UNICEF official, to discuss the implications of these sanctions and their impact on his organization and other human rights defenders. Welcome to our program, Kungla.
Toji, just call me Samphe.
Okay, sure.
No government duties, so Samphe is fine. It works very well. Toji.
So, Samphe, let me straight away begin by asking you this. What led to the sanctions imposed by the Chinese government on the Canada-Tibet Committee? Could you provide us some context about the Canada-Tibet Committee's advocacy work and why you believe it has drawn this response?
Just very briefly, CTC has been working originally in Canada since 30 plus years, advocating for Tibetan advocacy issues, human rights issues, and also of late the whole issue of negotiation. So we're supporting that direction in policy, and we work very closely with Parliament. We advocate with the government, policy departments like Foreign Affairs. We work with civil society, obviously, human rights groups, advocates, other human rights defenders, coalitions like the Uyghurs, Hong Kong coalition, as well as the some dissident coalitions. And then, of course, our own Tibetan community now, which is quite significant in Canada. And so that's the context in which we work. About the actual reason for the sanctions, early in December, the government of Canada sanctioned 9, I think, officials, 3 of them relating to Tibet, including the very well-known, in fact, notorious Chen Guangwu, who was actually responsible for developing that system of surveillance and repression in Tibet. And then later, because it was successful, he was sent to Turkestan, where he continued in a bigger scale that work. Also, for some security, public security official and former head of the TAR. When that happened, then there was counter-sanction. So we have been caught with counter-sanction. And so it's us, Uyghurs, and then human rights defenders who work with us, and some academics who work with us. Yeah, so I've explained the reasons. And so the implications are, we're looking at them, is the implications for travel in many countries. There's also implications within Canada, because the United Front and others, they run shadow organizations here. And Canada is increasingly aware that the transnational repression is also happening here. And in fact, the very act of sanctioning civil society, this is the first time they've sanctioned civil society organizations. And what basically the message from the PRC is, and they said it, they say that we are peddling lies about the situation in Tibet or in Xinjiang, and that we're doing it with American money, which is a big hoot, because we're really very small, and what little fund we have received is micro. Largely we're using resources in Canada that we have. So that's their reason, for sanctioning us. So we're looking at all these issues, how it affects our daily life. There are this legislation under which they sanctioned us. This allows them also to actually, if there's an Article 5, if that is then brought to play, even people, other organizations with whom we're affiliated can fall under the sanction. So those are people who are working. The implications are quite profound. It means that if they join a new company or another thing or consulting, that whoever works with them can be sanctioned. So it's very broad in its scope, you know.
We'll go more detail into this.
That's the issue.
We'll go into detail later. So I like to ask. Okay. When I was reading through this the sanctions in the internet, I found this article, a report where Mehmet Toti, he's the executive director of Uyghur Rights Advocacy Project, right?
Yes.
So in this article, he said these sanctions, for him, it's like a badge of honor. He have said it there. So my question is, what do these sanctions actually mean for the Canada-Tibet Committee in practical terms? And are there any specific challenges you anticipate in continuing your work, such as operational or financial constraints?
Well, like Mehmet, in a sense, we're a small organization. So in some ways, it's a validation that we're having an impact. Otherwise, they wouldn't sanction us. So, now it's both a danger because there are hazards, but it's also an opportunity. And the opportunity, I think, is that in the past, in the Tibetan community, there was not a great deal of understanding of what we did. So people would sort of, they're okay, you guys are doing something, Today, I think at least the initial response from the people, not their institutions as much, has been much more of an interest. What is it that you folks do? And among some of the younger people, how can we be part of it? And I think that's a very good conversation, to have. Now, as I said, we've had, in fact, the first people to connect with us and give us, a sense about the sanctions and both to congratulate us and was the Global Uyghur Association, and then from Dharamsala, from the MPs like Hagarila, she very early on reached out to us. The response from other institutional areas it's coming in, I think, is what I can say. But it's, So the critical thing is we are not important. It's the work. It's what messages we're carrying, We can come and we can go, but the work needs to be done. The advocacy needs to be done. So I'll be kidding you if I don't say that everyone's delighted, because people are concerned, people have families, there are implications. There are implications for travel, for work. But at the same time, it is a kind of a backhand. So the important thing is that it means that our work, or the impact of our work, is getting through, I mean, the Chinese Foreign Ministry, and it's not the Foreign Ministry only, it's the United Front, and it's the proxy actors here. There's a lot of proxies around. So if they get a sense that these guys are actually getting something through, getting a message through, having partnerships. One of the ways we work is we work with all the political parties. We have a group called the Parliamentary Friends of Tibet, and every political party is represented there. And that's one of our strategies.
So, Samphe, how has the Canada-Tibet Committee responded to this move? And do you see it as an attempt at intimidation? And how does the Canada-Tibet Committee plan to counteract such pressures while continuing its advocacy for human rights?
Very much so. First of all, this is not going to stop us from what we do. But what it means that we have to now make closer links with our coalitions, and allies. We also have a meeting with the government of Canada, and what we're impressing on them, and they understand that this is not only about us. This is an attack on Canadian democracy. This is an attack on the very wellsprings of what it means to be a democratic, open society. What the United Front is saying to us is, you will not speak these things in that country, in Canada. I mean, it's audacious, but it shows you the ambition. So China's global ambitions are now increasingly coming to the fore, and this is something I'd like us all, our whole community, to take on board. Please be cognizant of, but not overawed by this China, this global China, this China that has global aspirations, global networks, global relationships, global trade, commerce. What it means is, in many places, it can cut off our advocacy. There are countries in which we used to be able to maybe no longer, because of the reach. One country right in the subcontinent is Nepal, where we have a population and where we have many links with the Himalayan populations, but the nature of the relationship with the PRC is such that increasingly it is becoming hazardous to advocate for Tibet, which is a huge pity because of the cultural, religious links that we have with that country.
This sanction isn't isolated. It includes other organizations advocating for Uyghurs and other human rights defenders in Canada. So what does this reflect about China's broader strategy against human rights defenders, and how can organizations like yours build solidarity to resist such actions?
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely, the Uyghurs and ourselves, and then the people who are working with us and who are articulating human rights, within PRC. We've been sanctioned. So as I said, we strengthen our coalitions. We strengthen our links with the Canadian communities, with Canadian publics. Yeah. As well, of course, for us, our own Tibetan community now. I think there is sort of perhaps a growing awareness that we're doing some interesting work, useful work, and that so we have to build those partnerships now, I think. So at many different levels, at the political level, at the administrative level, at the level of people, one of the things that we tell people, we are not advocating the dissolution of China. We're not advocating hate. What are we advocating? We're advocating that they respect us, our dignity, our culture, our religion, our language. Yeah, and then that we get the oxygen. Our people get the oxygen. Right now, they're squeezed. Incredibly. There's almost no space for anything. And then we're asking them to negotiate. This is so reasonable in a world where people are, into much more extreme forms of political expression. We are not. So it really is ironic that this kind of reaction from United Front and from China. But I think totalitarians are very they find this independence of thought very, very threatening for them. They understand force, but they don't understand this kind of civic action. This almost like Gandhiji says, satyagraha. It's it's discombobulating them, I think.
And over the past few weeks, the Central Tibetan Administration's leaders have also expressed solidarity with the Canada-Tibet Committee. Can you tell us how significant is this support, and what role do you think the global Tibetan community and governments like Canada can play in strengthening your efforts?
It's a very interesting. I think that what's happened with the Tibet movement is that it's in different countries it has different intensities. What is the needed is, I think, all of these movements, whether it's in Switzerland or the UK, Australia, they should see that if they stifle us, they will stifle them. We're all part of actually one movement. But because we're based in Canada, people say, oh, the Canada the Chudores. But it's actually, we are advocating for Tibet. We are living in Canada. We are all citizens of Canada, but we're advocating for Tibet. So I think there needs to be a bit more of a consciousness, that this has implications for all the movements. It's very good, that the CTA and Sikyong and also Tuju here and all have reached out to us, and that's fine. But we look forward to more intensive interaction and support. And I know it's there. It's there. We've in the past, there. So we would like to. I hope that the Tibet support groups in North America, just those in the United, only about the Canadians, but actually Canada or the US, it's Tibet, yeah. So I hope that there's a consciousness there. People have reached out to us individually from the United States too, so yeah, my expectation is that this will strengthen our networks. When you're small, then you find strength in networks. But one thing, we're very grateful. The Parliament reached out to us, and MPs like Hagirila and even Tenzin Sundula, who's an amazing patriot, has reached out to us, partly because also we have familiarity with them. And so it's been very heartwarming at these messages of support.
What are the Canada-Tibet Committee's immediate priorities and long-term plans in the light of these sanctions? How do you plan to sustain your advocacy while dealing with potential hurdles?
Well, I think it's a threat, but at the same time, the threat also carries opportunity. So while mitigating the threat, and we're talking, as I said, meeting with various organizations in Canada, because after all, as we said to the government, suppression of the CTC or the Uyghurs working in Canada is a suppression of democracy in Canada. So, and this is how we should take it, and I think that message is getting through. In the medium term, long term, what did Lord Keynes say? In the long term, we're all dead, but in the medium term, we hope that will advance our work. Right now, we have our parliament is prorogued here. Elections are soon coming, apparently in the spring. And one of the things that perhaps we could all work as Tibetans who live in Canada and are Canadian voting citizens is to request from each of the parties what they will do in the event they come to office, or even not, on transnational repression, number one. And then two, how will they continue to help us keep the Tibet issue, at the fore in Canada? And so this is an opportunity too, but it means that we have to work together. We have to work in, with different groups, and we that would be the best way, I think, to do it pragmatically. And we don't get involved. We're a very small organization. so we don't get involved at all in the politics of our own community, because that means then we will have no energy for the advocacy we do. Yeah. So we have to keep that in mind. And we, just like with the Canadian Parliament, we cross-parliamentary. The same thing in our community. We're cross any kind of, as you know, the various fissures and fractures in our society. We tend to say to everybody, we're about, you know, uh, promoting these larger goals, articulated by His Holiness, yeah, and by CTA. And so we're not, it's not my policy, CTA's policy, these are articulations that have happened at the appropriate level. And then we, of course, bring it here and try to move these support for this forward.
So before signing off with this conversation, I have one last question. I'd like to ask Samphe, on a personal level, how have these sanctions impacted your perspective on the work that you do? Does this experience strengthen your resolve to continue advocating for human rights?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I'm 75 now, and I've been retired a few years, but I'm not retired because I'm now doing this, of course, in a voluntary capacity. And I had thought that I would, in the next, after the elections, younger people should take over and things like that. But now I can't immediately do that because it looks like I'm being, running away from something, that Mr. Xi Jinping's Christmas present to us. So no, I'm not going anywhere for a while, for the next 1 or 2 years, because we need to put ourselves back in a certain state and things. So no, our resolve is very high. We are obviously concerned. We have families, we have families on the Tibetans. We have families in Tibet, and if you read the articles of the sanction, they can be very broad, and so we also have that in mind. One of the sacrifices many of us make who do this work is we sacrifice our contact with our relatives, and it's, as you get older, it's a more difficult thing, it's that's such a critical thing. So, I never saw my grandfather or my uncles, and things. And that's a sacrifice we make, yeah. But then people in Tibet are making much larger sacrifices, yeah. And so we have to keep all of that in mind. No, it's not going to, stop us. And we will take precautions. There are precautions to take. Our Canadian, partners here in the appropriate places know, and increasingly, the United Front's activities are coming to light, and Canadians are now transnational repression and foreign actors. The issue of the role of foreign actors in the political arena have now is becoming a political issue. People are realizing the extent of it. So I hope that will, give us a measure of protection. Yeah, because those who need to know this understand that this is going on. There's some regulations coming soon, I think already in play. We want the registration of foreign advocates and actors, so the government can see who's here and who's doing, and what are they doing. And of course, as long as they work within the democratic system, that's all right. But it's those who are, they use other means to intimidate, to harass, to change, people's persuasion, people's actions. That is, I think, increased. So the good thing is that is increasingly coming to the consciousness now of Canadians. 10 years ago, if we'd said this to people, they'd say, oh, no, you are, there is no such thing. And there was not that much awareness about this. But we've had hearings. In fact, Samphe Lhalungpa took part as a witness in some of these hearings where, Canadian leaders and policy leaders came to understand the extent to which, in our case, of course, we deal with the PRC, and how it surveils people, how it harasses people, intimidates people, so I think this time we hope that those things will be taken care of. The bigger question will be what we do when we go outside the OECD countries. Something like 59 countries have extradition treaties with the PRC. And although our offense is not a criminal offense, it's a civic offense, but I don't think the PRC makes very fine distinctions between these kinds of things. For them, opposition is opposition. But no, it won't shut us down. And in fact, we look forward to much more strengthened partnerships now within the community, outside the community, and it's given us a new burst of energy.
So Samphe, thank you so much for taking out your time today to speak with Tibettv on this crucial matter. We wish you all the strength and support to you and your colleague in this time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Sure, thank you, and it's very, very good to speak with you. I think it's for me. I feel that for us, the communities and our whole interface and our whole presence in India, it's a very important thing. It's a kind of a rootedness that we have when we are not able to be in Tibet, and His Holiness is there. So it's very important. I place a great deal of importance. I was born in India, grew up there, studied there, and so it's always good to be able to reach audiences in India, and traveling to India is not going to be a problem at all for us. So that's nice to know that we can actually come and go in India. And thank you for reaching out. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
So that brings us to the conclusion of today's episode of In Conversation with Tibettv. Thank you all for watching.